Business Secretary, thanks so much for talking to us. Do you think that Donald Trump's tariffs agenda is going to plan?
Well, only the president can speak for his own agenda. Clearly, the consequences affect us all. It's been an exceptionally challenging day. There's no other way to describe it. But what we can do, as well as try and find a way through our own relationship with the US, is make decisions domestically that put us in the best possible position to navigate this challenging period. So the kind of decision the Prime Minister's made today, that he's announced in terms of backing the British automotive sector, who are facing this 25% tariff with the US, fundamentally changing the regulation, being ambitious on the transition to electric vehicles, but much more flexibility, much more pragmatism as to how we get there. That is the kind of decision that we can make, and we've got to have more of that. We're going to respond in a way on the things that we control that backs British business, gives us the best possible platform. We're not saying it's going to be easy, but these are the things within our own power to decide.
On that, Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, said that those decisions around cars were not the magic bullet. So, what else, what are the sort of big interventions that you expect?
For the automotive sector, this was the biggest principal ask. Effectively, what we'd inherited, not by design from the previous government, but what we had inherited was a situation where effectively domestic producers of cars and vans were being penalised and essentially having to pay what we would call a fine to companies in China to buy credits because they weren't meeting the demand for the market in the UK. That's unacceptable to me. I cannot have people being penalised for making products in the UK. Backing British industry meant a big change in that area. I am really pleased we've been able to bring that forward because of the challenges that we face. More is required across the board. I mean, the industrial strategy...
What would the big intervention actually look like?
Well, I think, first of all, this is the biggest intervention for the automotive sector. We're not saying it fixes every problem. That's what Heidi's point is.
Saying it's tinkering around the edges.
Oh, it's not tinkering around the edges. So just to be clear, this is a change in how the system works, in how the fines, the level at which they're levied at. It will fundamentally stop people being penalised for making products in the UK. So this is the big ask of the sector. I think what Heidi was pointing out is she's not saying simply making a decision like this compensates for a 25% tariff in a major market like the US. We recognise that. But the things that we can control, we want that tariff barrier removed in terms of the US market, but we'll make decisions domestically that give us the best possible compensation and the most competitiveness. And really, look, this government was already committed to an industrial strategy. We're going to publish that just before the spending review. Some big things are part of that. We already recognised that we felt what we inherited, for industry in particular and for services, was not competitive enough. That's why we've had such low growth. So some of these decisions we can bring forward because we need to respond here and now, but it's part of that wider government agenda. But as the Prime Minister said, the difference is we're not casual, we're not relaxed about people making things in other countries and importing them here. We care about our own industry. We're going to back it to the hilt.
Look, we've seen what happened with the markets today. It's obvious that we're entering a period of unknown. Are you being straight with the public about what that might actually mean for them in terms of difficult decisions? You talk about domestic decisions, but do you have the money to actually make the changes to mitigate the impact of that?
I think the public are under no illusions that this matters to them. They've seen the impact on economies all around the world. This is a moment of, unfortunately, significant moment in economic history now in terms of what we've seen around the world, particularly today. So I don't think the public are under any illusions what this means for them. I think what we shouldn't do is catastrophise. We shouldn't panic. We shouldn't escalate a trade war, as some colleagues in other political parties have asked me to do. That would be the wrong thing. What we can do is respond very actively. Being calm doesn't mean you're passive. We, for instance, bolstered our trade defences. We put more resources through the Trade Remedies Authority on monitoring the impact of trade diversion, which we might see as goods that would have gone to other countries might now come to the UK. We have got these kind of domestic changes to policy in place. And, of course, we're negotiating not just with the US, but other countries too, to bring down tariff barriers to make sure the UK is the best placed it can be in a challenge.
But in terms of those assurances for the public, can you tell them that you will do everything it takes to try to protect the public from the impact?
We can be absolutely clear. We will do everything we can to back British business, to make sure we are as best placed as we can be. The impact of this will partly be determined by how other countries react to what the US has done. That's beyond our control. But the things that we can control, the decisions we can make, are about backing the UK and backing British business, removing barriers out of the way, whether that's regulation, whether that's the kind of changes we had to see in the automotive sector today. We are totally committed to that. There's been some other ones around life sciences, bring down the time of clinical trials in the UK. That's a big thing for investment in the life sciences sector. There are a set of decisions, these are just the beginnings of them, that will lead right up into that industrial strategy to make sure we are backing the UK.
Just going back to the decisions that have been made around electric vehicles, the other argument on the other side that I think we should make is that you're watering down one of your biggest environmental commitments. Are you still on track for net zero by 2050?
Look, we're absolutely ambitious about the destination.
That is still the commitment.
That is still the commitment. So we haven't, for instance, changed the end point of where we want to get to on electric vehicles. What we have recognised is the next few years are the hardest. The kind of thing we've seen in the US has made that harder. So the pragmatism, the flexibilities in the system, making sure we're not penalising people in the short term for the situation people find themselves in terms of demand in the UK. That's that mix of ambition and pragmatism that we need. And that's why the sector itself, this was their number one ask. They've backed the decision very strongly. They'll want more things, of course they will, but we couldn't have said we're backing the automotive sector if we left in place what we inherited from the previous Conservative government.
OK, I want to talk to you about the potential for a deal, because it seems like the timeline has slipped slightly. You know, tell me what you are the man that knows what is going on with the deal.
You will understand I can't, for obvious reasons, give a kind of running commentary as to where we are at. We have made a very significant offer to the US. It's not just about removing the tariffs that have been announced, but how can we make that relationship stronger? How can we give companies in the UK, particularly smaller companies, more access to the US market and meet some of the US demands in some areas? Now, the US itself and the President personally are the only people who can decide where they want to take this agenda. Is this about a fairer trading system, in which case, great. Show me a better example of a fairer, more reciprocal, mutually beneficial trading relationship than the US and the UK. But some of that will be how they want to take this forward. But I do believe a deal is possible.
Just give us a vague sense of the timeline, because, you know, there had been talk that it would be this month. Is that not on the timeline?
I'm not able to give that kind of running commentary for obvious reasons, but I do believe...
So there could still be a deal this month?
If you take the existing relationship, right, it's a fair, it's a balanced one. There are things on both sides we would like to deepen, we'd like to change. If that is what the US is seeking to do, rather than, say, using tariffs to raise revenue or as a permanent standing item of policy, we could absolutely remove some of the existing trade barriers and build on that strong relationship, make it even stronger. Is
online safety going to be part of any deal?
Look, I think some of that speculation is misplaced. In the main, the conversations that we have are about...
It's wrong, that's what you're saying.
Well, I think, look, fundamentally, this is about the tariffs on goods. It's about how services work in either country, how you recognise each other's standards in place, and all of that. We would never be seeking to dilute the safety of children online. But equally, I think it's important to say the US does not have an agenda about making our children less safe. And I understand why there's so much speculation about, you know, what might or might not be part of any kind of agreements. But let's just recognise this is about stronger trading relationship on both sides.
Jonathan Reynolds, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you.